Kyle Larson was having the kind of Iowa race that could have completely changed the direction of his season. He started on the front row, had a car capable of running near the front, and was still fighting inside the top group when one restart suddenly turned his entire night upside down. And the driver at the center of it was John Hunter Nemechek. What happened next left Larson clearly frustrated, damaged both Hendrick Motorsports cars, and turned what looked like another strong opportunity into a 33rd place finish. But then, Nemechek made an admission that nobody could ignore, and it completely changed the story. Because what Nemechek admitted about the incident explains why Larson was so frustrated in the first place. So stay with me until the end, because there is much more to this Iowa controversy than what happened on the track. Welcome back to NASCAR Nation News. If you follow Kyle Larson, NASCAR Cup Series news, and the biggest stories from around the garage, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Kyle Larson entered the Iowa Corn 350 with plenty of pressure already surrounding him. He qualified second, right alongside pole sitter Ryan Blaney, and the number 5 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet looked like a car that could potentially fight near the front. But there was one problem. Larson and crew chief Cliff Daniels had already acknowledged before the race that they were still fighting balance issues with the car. Even with that concern, Larson managed to keep himself around the top 5 and top 10 for much of the race. Then came the restart that changed everything. After a caution, Larson was on fresh tires and had a strong run, but as the cars moved through turns 3 and 4, John Hunter Nemechek's number 42 Toyota drifted up the track. That pushed Larson toward the outside wall. At almost the same time, Riley Herbst was making a move underneath. Ryan Preece and Alex Bowman were also caught in the developing situation, and suddenly there was almost no room left for anyone. Larson was squeezed into the wall, and Alex Bowman was collected as well. For Larson, the damage was serious enough to break a rear toe link. The number 5 had to come to pit road for repairs and return to the track laps down. A race that had started with Larson near the front was now effectively over. He eventually finished 33rd, and Larson was not exactly interested in hearing excuses. After the incident, his spotter explained that Nemechek's team believed the number 42 had downshifted and then gotten stuck in neutral. Larson's response was short, but it said everything. Is he not able to hold a straight line like normal? Then came the explanation about the transmission issue. Larson simply answered, yeah, cool, professional. That was the moment the frustration became obvious. Larson wasn't just upset because he had lost track position. He had a car that had started second, had fresh tires, and had a legitimate chance to recover from the issues he had been dealing with earlier in the race. Instead, he left Iowa with a damaged car, a 33rd place finish, and another disappointing result added to a season that has already been far more difficult than many expected. The championship implications made the situation even worse. Larson had been 6th in the standings just 2 races earlier. After Iowa, he dropped to 10th. So this wasn't simply about losing a few positions in one race. It was another setback at a time when Larson needed momentum, and that's why his reaction to Nemechek attracted so much attention. But here's where the story takes a turn. John Hunter Nemechek didn't come out afterward and try to blame Larson, Herbst, Bowman, or anyone else. He didn't try to make the incident sound harmless. Instead, he accepted responsibility. Speaking after the race, Nemechek said, "Not trying to make excuses whatsoever. I got to be better." Then he apologized directly to Larson and the entire number 5 team. He explained that Larson had been on 4 fresh tires and had a great run through turns 1 and 2, and Nemechek admitted that what happened was not something he wanted. That response matters because Nemechek clearly understood why Larson was angry. He even said Larson had every right to be upset. I would be upset if I was in his shoes as well. That's a very different reaction from the kind of post-race argument fans often see after incidents like this. There was no public back and forth, no attempt to turn the blame around. Nemechek owned the mistake, and there was another layer to his apology that made the situation more personal. Nemechek revealed that Kyle Larson was one of the first drivers he looked up to when he joined Chip Ganassi Racing in 2018. He said he had learned a lot from Larson and described him as a tremendously talented race car driver. That history makes the Iowa incident more complicated, because this wasn't simply two drivers who happened to make contact. Nemechek had genuine respect for Larson, and now he had played a major role in ruining Larson's race. And this also wasn't the first time these two had been involved in a major racing moment. Back in the 2023 Xfinity Series race at Darlington, Larson and Nemechek battled aggressively for the win on the final lap. They made contact coming to the checkered flag. Larson won, and Nemechek spun into the inside wall before finishing fifth. That was a completely different situation, but it adds another chapter to the history between the two drivers. This time, however, the consequences were much more significant for Larson's current Cup season. The number 5 team needed a strong result, and instead, they left Iowa with another frustrating finish. The interesting part now is what happens next. Nemechek has already reached out and publicly accepted responsibility. Larson has made it clear that he wasn't happy with what happened. But NASCAR moves quickly. There is no time to spend an entire season looking backward at one restart. Larson now has to turn the page and focus on the next race, while Nemechek has to make sure a mistake like this doesn't become a pattern. And that may ultimately be the biggest takeaway from this entire situation. NASCAR drivers are going to make mistakes, especially on restarts when the field compresses. Cars are fighting for lanes, and one small movement can create a chain reaction involving multiple drivers. But what separates one bad moment from a bigger feud is what happens afterward. Larson was angry because his race was damaged. Nemechek understood why, and instead of making the situation worse, he admitted that he needed to do better. For Larson, though, the damage is already done. He leaves Iowa with a 33rd place finish, a drop to 10th in the standings, and another race added to his frustrating winless run dating back to May 2025. So while the headlines may focus on Larson calling out Nemechek, the bigger story is what happened after the anger faded. One driver was furious because his race disappeared in a matter of seconds. The other driver admitted that he was responsible and apologized to the team he had hurt. Now the question is whether Larson accepts that apology and moves forward, or whether this incident becomes another chapter in an already complicated history between the two drivers. Either way, Iowa gave NASCAR fans one of those moments that doesn't end when the cars leave the track. The crash lasted only seconds. The consequences could last much longer. Thanks for watching NASCAR Nation News. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more Kyle Larson and NASCAR updates, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us for the next story.